All right, CNT140, we're looking at Chapter 8, Premise Cabling Installation. Here's our objectives. What we're going to find here is we'll talk about some contractor type planning for, and then we'll get into the install. And some of the install part we have already done or will be doing soon this semester. So some of these will be a good refresher. Some of these will be a good preview of things coming down the road. All right, let's dig in. After the design, the next part is the install. This process is actually pulling the cabling, terminating, testing, troubleshooting, fixing, and then documenting and turning over to the customer. So there's a lot of prep for, and then actually doing the install. So the first part is preparing. They talk about here, finding a contractor or selecting a contractor. Just recognize you down the road in IT, you might either be the contractor for customers. So obviously you would want to be aware of the kinds of things the contractor is doing. Or you and IT might be a customer, as in your job site is having a contractor come in and do cabling. So you want to be familiar with what they're doing, so you can, in an educated manner, look at the stuff they're preparing for you and doing and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But also I understand what they're doing, or I know this is legit that they need to do this, etc. So for you, kind of looking at both sides of the coin right now is kind of valuable for down the road. Not 100% sure what you'll need down the road in your job, but both sides of the coin could be useful for you. So user must choose a contractor, and the contractor should be experienced in premise cabling and know how to walk a customer through and actually do the job. The contractor can do the install, but can also assist with the design, and actually probably should, with indicating, okay, you probably want to consider this, or, we need to do it this way by code, etc., and doing some guidance with the design. That way, hopefully things will go smoothly and actually work when it's done. The contractor should also be able to help with choosing the vendors for equipment, supplies, etc. They might have experience with certain vendors or be knowledgeable on, which will allow the install to go quicker and potentially perform better, because all the components and things are things they're familiar with in installing, and they know how to install. Should a customer have special equipment, whether it be a special, maybe it's a special video system, or a special equipment that's hooking up using special ports or whatever, the contractor should be aware of that. And if they don't know how to deal with it, get training so they know how to deal with it correctly. That can happen in some scenarios. The contractor might actually need to discuss certain choices with the customer too, of like, you have this figured out, or you'd like to include this in your design. Have you considered this, which might be the better way to do it in the long run for the customer, and doing like a little bit of educating to help them out in the long run. The user might actually ask the contractor to deal with purchasing the equipment, receiving, etc. And that can actually be handy for the contractor, because they can schedule and make sure the equipment's there when they need it for their team to install and so forth. And maybe have a little bit better control on shipping and delivering and that sort of thing. Any technicians doing the install should be trained and certified. In some cases, they have to be working in certain facilities. Other times, it's just the company policy of like, no, we want our technicians trained with this certification. That way, we are sure the install should be done correctly and things should perform hopefully right out of the gate with minimal troubleshooting or minimal repair that needs to be done. The book mentions obviously the Fiber Optic Association certifications. They do have some on premise cabling. They do have some on fiber optic. There's a series more that they have. I have a link here if you want to check them out. Another one you should be aware of is BICSI. BICSI is a Building Industry Consulting Services International. This is a relatively large certification body. Again, they have copper install, fiber install, and again, design and so much more. You may or may not need to down the road do some certification for cable install, depending on where you work. Again, if you end up working for a telecom company, you might need to go to their training, or they might send you to a training like this so they know They know you know how things should be done. But you very well might work in an IT role at, I'm going to say like a school or something, or a hospital, where they're like, no, we bring contractors in to do that. That's not really our issue to do. So down the road, it might be one or the other for you. The final 4 requirements for the contractor: testing, troubleshooting, documenting, and any kind of restoring of connections that need to be done. This should be talked about ahead of time so the contractor knows, what do I need to do, what don't I need to do. And the contractor and customer must agree on all this and kind of lay it out. Do we need to troubleshoot everything? Do we need to certify it all for you? Do we need to document it all for you? What is it that you need from us? Documentation for the contractor really needs to start before the project even starts. In the design phase and picking out equipment and supplies and so forth, documentation needs to be started. Copies of the documentation, when they're done, along with any excess components, ports, etc., should be turned over to the customer. That way they have the documentation and they have extra ports and supplies that they can do the repairs and keep the system running over time. Contract, they talk about in here things to consider for the contract. It has to be spelled out what is going to be installed, what's acceptable test results, what's the documentation required. All this needs to be figured out up front so both sides know what they're getting, and are they getting what they need for this site. And a contractor does not need to do extra stuff if it's not in the contract. It's important to ensure that both sides know what they're getting, and what they're getting is the pieces they need or want from this job. So planning for the project, you actually do need to plan out what you're going to do. And there actually is there are people that do project management for a living, that this is the kind of thing they do. They're planning out what gets done when. These technicians show up here to do this in this time frame, then this electrician shows up here at this time frame, and this person shows up here. These supplies go here, those supplies go here. That is the job, some people's job with project management. But on it maybe a smaller scale that you're doing here, you still need a plan of like what's going to go first, second, third. There needs to be a schedule. Well, sometimes you run into places using what's called a Gantt chart that'll show the tasks that need to be done and approximately a timeline for each of the tasks. And you're seeing some are overlap and some are taking a period of time. These would need to be delineated and then kind of approximated what's going to get worked on when. And that way, maybe this is the cable installer part and the electrician part is here, and they know, okay, I don't need to be there right away. I'll come in later and pull the circuit or whatever. Or vice versa. Maybe the electrician work is up here, then your cable installers come in, put the trays, and etc. Later on with our bid spec project, towards the end, we're actually going to do a mini project plan as if we would be trying to put this cable plan into the building that we're cabling. In this case, our Hall Tech building. We're going to do a mini project plan using a software to lay out the tasks and approximately how long we think each one's going to take, just to get an idea of what it's like to come up with a project plan. To schedule a job, you need a lot of information. Estimates from delivery times, prices, that sort of thing. Should items be stock? Yeah, some of our items should be stock. That way you can easily get them or ensure that they'll be there. Some things like fiber optic cables might be made to order. You can actually order them special length with specific connectors on. Those may need some lead time to order, have made, and get shipped to you. Later on in our bid spec, we're going to order a fiber cable for between our two closets in our plan. And we're going to use this site here, Stonewall Cables, that allows you to plug in all the details, what type of cable. Here we're doing OM3, 10 gig fiber, LC connector, LCD connector, the distance, and it actually spits out a price for us. And they would need some time to be able to make that and get it to you. And down here they say, hey, usually in about 2 days we can ship it. So you might be like a week out until they make it and ship it to you, kind of thing, depending on where you are. But you can actually have that backbone cable made, if you will, between your closets. Contractors are going to usually try to use a lot of the same type of components from job to job, same type of manufacturer, for example. That way, they're familiar with they're familiar with it, and know how to deal with them. Your technicians know how to deal with them, know how to terminate them, how to test them, etc. And that's going to increase the number of past tests, if you will, right out of the gate. And will know how to deal with problems as they come along because they're familiar with that product. Any components not familiar to the installer, they need time to learn or even get training for that particular product. And new training might arise if new equipment types come along, new tools, etc., new test equipment, new testers. You might need to have people trained on that so you know how to use it on the job site. They talk about never try to show up at a job with something brand new out of the box, if you will. You need to do a little bit of lead time on that and make sure you're understanding how it works and how to terminate and so forth. Ordering components when the job is acquired. Then I have to worry about scheduling delivery. This might come in phases depending on how big the project is. And then also, where is the supplies need to be delivered? Where do they need to be delivered to? And depending on the job site, you might need to plan for security. You might be able to wheel it in and lock it up in a garage, so to speak, or the loading dock area because you're working in a building that's already constructed. But if it's out in an area where the building is being built, you might need to arrange for locked-in fence or security guards or etc., or some sort of job site box that you can lock up. You need to schedule labor, how many installers, how long, etc. If any training is needed on the front end for the job, that needs to be planned for. Labor materials in the schedule. Planning is almost done at that point. Review schedule with everyone involved so they know. Discuss safety rules if there's any special safety rules for that site. Maybe you're actually working at a site where the building is being constructed, welding over here and laying block over there or whatever. You would need to discuss the safety with the people there so they know to stay away from certain things or what to do. Keep all your cable connectors, etc., packages to be able to give to the customer in the future. And then schedule, you need to be checking the schedule regularly to make sure everything is going on task at the time it's supposed to. The book then shares a couple checklists that can be used to make sure that you have things done at the correct, the right things done for the right phase of the project, if you will. Here they talk about pre-install checklist, all kinds of things that you could be checking off and make sure you have done. And then one while before actually starting the install, and then during the install, and then also one for after completed. These might be some usable checklists for you down the road of things that you could pull out and say, well, I'm going to at least work on this and maybe alter this over time to meet what we're doing. But these are some good checklists to keep in mind. Those could be useful down the road for you. So now before doing the install, we need to do some prep. So before doing the actual install, you might need to go in and, before actually pulling the cable and terminate and so forth, there might need to be some prep at the site that needs to be done ahead of time. So that might be things like putting in the cable trays, putting in conduit, putting in J-hooks. Those kinds of things might need to be put in first. So we're talking cable trays, J-hooks for supporting cabling. We might need to put cable trays in or interduct in the cable trays for the fiber optic. Those kinds of things might need to be done first. You might even need to do conduits between floors. We might actually be drilling through the floor here, putting a conduit in, fire stop kind of deal, eventually once you pull the cable through, between the floors, between your closets. Install these support structures for cable installations before the cable actually shows up, and we're following 569 guidelines to do so. 569 has in here about cable support system, what is needed. And with our cable support, we also want to be thinking future growth too. There are, from manufacturers, there are tables. These are tables for wire mesh cable trays, and there's a table here that shows how much weight a specific size of tray can hold, and then with that, how many cables will fit in a specific type of tray. And you'd want to make sure here, that's max, you'd want to make sure maybe I'll go up a size or two so I have room to grow as time goes down the line. Okay, as time moves on, I should say, time goes down the line. That was odd. As time moves on down the road for this facility. All right, we'll come back in the next podcast and keep on rolling.